I had a really good night of sleep and I'm feeling basically fully recharged and full of energy, which is a great thing because I was starting off the session with some explosive stuff. Yes, explosive pull-ups were back on the menu and I did a couple of things differently from the previous time. First of all, I was doing 3 sets and all of these three had slight variation from each other. The first one, as I was the freshest, I started off with a full explosive movement upwards and then going back down, starting from a static position again, and each repetition was its own individual thing. And then in the subsequent sets, as I was aware that some fatigue was going to build up, even though I'm taking longer rests, like 3 minutes in between sets, I actually allowed myself to build some momentum and go back down into a fully extended position that builds tension and then explode back up. This is because I want to also practice the motion of what would be a muscle up going back into the eccentric, where someone builds all the tension from the descending movement and then harnesses it into an explosive extra repetition. So I was kind of chaining them together for a few, and if I felt like I was misgrooving one, I was getting back into a bit of a swing and back into that and get some extra volume, because this is a movement that's very explosive and also very high intensity, but the repetitions are low, and that's also one of the reasons why I added a third set, as I've been doing this for a while now and I feel like I could do with a little extra volume. And the effort was good. As usual, I was stopping the set as soon as I felt like I wasn't really exploding much into the next rep and it was becoming just a normal pull-up. And at that point, since I also did an extra set, it was time to move over to the pushing part of the session. And since the first exercise was something very low reps for very high intensity, I went into somewhat higher reps on the pushing movement, which was the incline dumbbell presses. 20 kilos again, and I was doing one extra rep from the previous time. So I was doing 9 reps on the first set and 8 on the next one. The goal is to move to around 12, I think, and then go up in weight and see how many I can do with that, and keep going, progressing like that until I hit the wall. Hopefully I don't. And again, as usual, as this is somewhat lower intensity and higher repetitions, I feel good pairing it up with something else. In this case, it's some wrist work, also because I was going to do some handstands later on in the session. I was doing a couple of sets of these, and last time I was also mentioning that the fact that the forearms are resting onto the knees doesn't make the reverse wrist curls very comfortable, but because the weight is so light, I don't really feel like I should be changing it much. I think that if I'll ever build up to the intensity where I'm using very heavy dumbbells for that, I may actually be doing them while I am dangling my arms vertically and I'm just lifting either way, so that there is no part of the arm that is resting onto anything and there is no impediment to the contraction of the muscle. And then it was time for the lower part of the body. I was doing the usual sled pushes and also some handstand work. The first handstand didn't really look that good. It wasn't really a tuck, so like I called it like that because that was the intention. But the next one coming up, I was actually able to get into somewhat decent repetitions on tucks. The first one I wasn't really getting to my thighs parallel to the floor, but the second one was looking better and much more controlled. Maybe there is a bit of an arch in the lower back, but I will take this because the third rep was decent. I was shooting up in not really a controlled way, but I'm happy with the result because I was getting somewhat 3 repetitions that looked okay. So that's good work. And on sled pushes, it's the usual stuff, 105 kilos. I really should start tracking the time that it takes me to go from one side to the other. I'm kind of doing that with jumping, and that's even harder because I almost need to count the frames. I will just have to calculate the difference between when the set ends and when it begins. So it's definitely doable, I just need to get onto it. And then, last but not least, I finished it all off with a couple of sets of assisted Nordic curls. I grabbed a slightly taller / bigger Bosu ball from the previous time just because I wanted to get some extra repetitions in, and I'm very keen on getting as many reps as I can without putting too much strain on the bicep femoris. So all the repetitions were nice and controlled. Maybe there is a tiny bit of hip flexion that I could do without, but overall it was a nice session and I'm satisfied about that. Ciao!